Who wishes to speak, please come to the stand and name and address.
Good evening, Patrick Boyle, 30 Windsor Road. This is my third consecutive presentation before the board, and I haven't heard word one back from the town. The situation's been going on for 8 months. If it's not resolved by the end of the month, I think I'm going to have to take it outside the town's purview. As I said in my first appearance, I would rather not make a huge deal out of this, but there are circumstances that I feel are highly offensive, illegal, unusual, and I'd like to see them dealt with. So,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, moving on. In response to some of the more recent public comments, including Mr. Boyle's, the TA has prepared a response, which we will hear.
The town council contacted me and informed me that the fence issue the matter is not a matter within the jurisdiction of the select board and the town administrator. He said this matter involves a decision of the building inspector, and the only avenue of appeal is to appeal to the zoning board of appeals under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Sections 8 and 15. The select board and town administrator will not intervene, and it is advised that Mr. Boyle consult with counsel and determine if he still has a valid appeal, since typically there's a 30-day window under the zoning code and state law to appeal those determinations. So that was his determination from town council.
That was two.
If I may, Ms. Chairwoman, address that?
So just to be clear, I believe we advised Mr. Boyle to go to, or you advised Mr. Boyle to go back to the ZBA originally. And I don't know if you did that. I mean,
I did that.
I will, if I could just caution, you can come on up to the microphone, but if you could just hear me out for 1 second.
Absolutely.
We're not court. I'm
Understand.
not Judge Judy,
That's-
we're not court. We're here to listen to, concerns, and we have limited powers
Yep.
to intervene with other boards and their decisions.
Okay.
That being said, when people have an issue that they want to come before us, we are happy to hear them out. I did have, Debbie and I did have a conversation. We had her check with counsel. I think it's difficult because this is a dispute between you and your neighbor. It's another board's decision. We really can't intervene.
It was a dispute between myself and my neighbor up until the point that my neighbor, as a town employee, said, "You're not going to get anywhere if you approach this because, my wife's a town official."
Well-
And if I may finish,
Yeah.
and the second thing, when the building inspector certified in an official document something she knows to be false,
that would be up to a court to determine.
Right.
That's not up to us to determine. So I
And that's
think
what-
counsel
okay.
is suggesting that you seek counsel
Council
to...
is basically saying, go ahead and sue the town, file a state ethics complaint, file a complaint with the district attorney, the inspector general, and all that. That is what I've been trying to avoid. If the council, if I can extrapolate from my experience in business, they're on a yearly retainer. Based on that yearly retainer, they bill against that retainer for work they do for the town. It is in their best interest for people to go outside of resolving stuff in the town and actually file lawsuits, because then they bill more.
So
which is
I think that
counterproductive,
now
I think,
you're
here.
insinuating that our town council is suggesting you do this for financial gain. So I think we need to...
It
Again-
doesn't make any sense to me when...
Well, I can tell you from my experience in my job,
Yeah.
when people call about these sort of things, those are the steps that we recommend that they take. So if
Right.
you were calling my office to say, I have a problem with X town administrator, X board in Y town.
Right.
My recommendation to you would probably be those same things.
Okay.
And I don't have
You don't have
any
this-
financial
Right.
response.
It just
I
seems-
think right now what we're dealing with is you're coming before us, we're having hearsay. We asked the TA to get a response because during
Okay.
public comment, we couldn't comment. We now have it on as an agenda item so we can have a little bit of
Appreciate that.
a more discussion, and that's why I put it on as an agenda item.
Okay.
But that being said, I think, it's hard for us. We're hearing one side of a story. We're not the
I
board
understand.
that rules on it. We need to be able to give you some suggestions of next steps that you can take,
If-
and that's why we checked with
Okay.
council.
And if Mr. Younger had told me 3 days after I first got the letter from the building inspector, and I actually have a recorded voicemail from him where he didn't mention anything about going to the Board of Appeals. He said, basically, building inspectors ruled.
Yeah. But I do think, I would recommend that you check back in because maybe they will give you some flexibility. Based on the law, it's 30 days, but if you check back in, they may be willing to grant you where you did have a case
Right.
where you were not given sort of what the next steps in the process were.
Right.
I think that's a reasonable thing if you were to resubmit a letter for them to consider an appeal. I can't imagine that they would.
Because when I contacted them a month ago, they said to me that it wasn't something that they were going to hear.
I'm sorry, just
Yeah.
a point of information, which is where, I'd love to comment on this too. I don't feel like this agenda item is posted as such that we as a board can
Well,
comment. So I'm struggling with that a little bit.
That's why it's an agenda item, which is.
Well, it's not, it's town and moderator's response, it's not board.
but it's an agenda item, so we can discuss it. It doesn't have
I'm sure
to
the
be
town
our
has much more
response.
pressing
It's-
things to
Yeah.
deal with tonight. We
My
appreciate your
points
time.
being,
Yeah.
I put it on as an agenda item so that we
Great.
could at least give you some guidance as to what next steps you could potentially take after checking with council, because it really isn't under our purview.
Okay.
And unfortunately, it is a dispute between you and your neighbor, and,
Right until the building inspector issued that letter.
yeah. So I think that's sort of where we have to.
Just, and you know that I'm in that business, so
Right.
I'm dealing with it for many, many, many years and seeing how the difference
I'm sorry.
in towns. I'm just saying.
No, what I'm struggling with, this is not posted that we're talking about a particular
Yes.
property or fence.
It doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be.
It does not have to
Because
be.
when the town administrator brings up something, we always discuss it.
It,
It's,
it does not have to be.
I'm just saying, it's more, it's clearly a civil matter.
The neighbor could have been here the last 2 meetings when things disparagingly were said.
Well, yes.
So,
I have lots of thoughts on this. I'm going to stay out of this conversation because I don't
that's fine.
feel comfortable.
Thank you for your time.
I think we can just
Yep.
move along. Thank you. That being said, the next, did you have anything else? No? Debbie? No? Okay.
You want to stay?
No, I'm gonna, if you're bringing up the other one, that's the reason why.
I think it was going to be at the end. Were you going to do the,
It's under her report, so.
oh,
Again, bringing up the public comment, for us not to comment was difficult sitting here. I mean, my neighbor coming up, that's been going on 20 years. The experiences and all the calls, that's been going on 20 years. Before I was on the board, 10 years ago that happened.
Well-
So that's why, having the proof, the email and everything to Debbie, the pictures, the calls and stuff, I'm gonna recuse myself on this one. Just, it's safe and sound.
Yeah.
That's why public comment should be
Okay.
changed. People can come up here and just tee off on it.
well,
so,
that's
without having the
next.
facts.
Okay, this was for the last public comment, it was Mr. Dunn. I've obtained pictures showing Mr. Dunn's vehicles being parked on the sidewalk, and I also obtained the police reports where the officers had responded and did observe parking violations. Warnings or tickets were issued, and again, at that particular time, George was not a member of the board. I've also obtained police reports as well for complaints of snow being put onto the plowed roadways. Officers did respond, and they also observed violations. I do have the pictures and reports, so if you'd like to see them, I'm not going to, post them, but if you'd like to see them, I can make them available to you.
I did not, the pictures were sent to Debbie. I asked Debbie to respond. I think it was in everybody's best interest to not be spreading pictures around. I don't think that they were something that needed to necessarily go up, out of respect for the resident. I'm not in the business of trying to embarrass anybody, but I did want some clarification on both of those for the public's edification. If people do want to come to your office and see whatever you have looked at, they're welcome to do that, but I certainly wasn't interested in putting it up on the screen. So thank you. David, would you mind letting Mr. Siebold know that he can come back in? No, I have no comment on it. It is what it is, so.
Just I know it's posted here, but in the future, if we're going to talk about a specific topic, just reference the topic as opposed to, I see what you're saying, it's referencing
It's referencing
the
the,
comments from a previous meeting.
Yeah.
I think it should have the particular issues.
Agenda number 6.
yep.